Welcome, everyone. I'm Kathy Lee, and this is We The Humankind. This is a platform to inspire kindness and to help others use their voice to make an impact. My goal is for this platform is to help spotlight change makers who are making a difference and doing meaningful work to make this world a kinder place. I'm really excited because I have a very special guest today and a very good friend, Bryce Evans, with us. Bryce is an artist of catharsis and the founder of The One Project. I am going to introduce him over to you guys now and let him talk about himself a little bit and about The One Project. Welcome, Bryce.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for having me. Honored to be the first.
So, I'm very well versed with what you do and about The One Project. But for those who are not familiar with you, do you want to share a little bit about what The One Project is about and a little bit about your background as well?
Sure. So I'll maybe do background and lead into The One Project. So I've always considered myself an artist. And as you said, an artist of catharsis is kind of how I think about it. So I'm always thinking about and interested in how we can use art to, express ourselves, how to connect people to, and provide these little moments of catharsis for people in their lives. And so that, with that kind of frame, one project that's come out of that is The One Project. And really that started as just a single photo and then a photo series that I did about 10 years ago now. And that was my way at that time of kind of talking about and expressing around depression and anxiety that I was going through at that time. And so I kind of discovered how photography can be an easier way to talk about these difficult topics and a way to do that through nonverbal communication with your photos. And so that morphed from, it was a photo to a photo series and now into kind of a beautiful community of people who are learning about therapeutic photography, who are connecting and sharing stories around mental health to change how we talk about that and how we see it.
That's awesome. I think one of the things that people may be interested in knowing about specifically, like what does actually therapeutic photography means? Because when I first discovered or first learned about The One Project, I didn't quite know what that meant. I thought it was like therapy, but it's not actually therapy. It's just more like a technique that we're using. So do you want to elaborate a little bit more about what that terminology means? Yeah,
there's kind of two main terms. One is therapeutic photography. The other is phototherapy. And essentially the difference is one is you're a tool and a technique that you're doing on your own. It's self-directed. It's done outside of the context of kind of getting professional help, whether that's with a therapist or otherwise. Whereas phototherapy is similar techniques, but obviously a lot different, and it's within the context of a therapy environment. So, working with a therapist who has learned phototherapy and those different techniques can, assign you different sort of assignments in between your sessions, or they can work with you with your photos in a session. So you can be doing both, if you are working with a therapist. But I really saw like what I did for myself, and I discovered this before I knew the terms and everything. Is there's a lot of work that you can do just with therapeutic photography on your own to become better at talking about it, to become more comfortable talking about these subjects, and even just kind of working through this introspective process with your photos to understand yourself better and understand what you're going through, and also just connect with people better.
What would you say is the benefit in terms of, joining a community to share, what you're going through personally in terms of whatever your mental health condition may be, whether you're going through anxiety or depression? Like, what's the benefit of actually joining a community versus like seeing a therapist or joining some other like online forum?
Yeah, we try not to, obviously, like many things, it's not a replacement for professional help. We put that front and center. And it's something that can aid in that as well. If you are, seeing someone in that regard. But in terms of community, like one of the largest issues is really feeling like you're alone in your struggles, feeling like you're the only one who's going through that, or people won't understand, or maybe won't be supportive if you're open about what you're going through. So what we're really trying to do is provide that it's a private community, the One Project. So it's for members only. That was kind of a big, as I started to talk to more people about what I did and release that first project, that was a big need that was, that we saw was, there's Facebook, Instagram, all these different social media platforms, but a lot of people didn't feel comfortable or necessarily safe talking about certain things on those. Mm-hmm. So that was where we saw the need for this private community. And it's really kind of the main feedback we get from people is that just having like the context of how we've built it and how we kind of, let's say, curate the space or how we've created it and the guidelines around it have helped a lot of people to talk about things for the first time. Mm-hmm. So again, a lot of people are seeing a therapist and maybe that helps them then open up more with their therapist, or maybe they're only talking with their therapist about these things. And this allows them to kind of open up more and add a bridge from, just one outlet. So the community is a big part of it, just having people who are, going through similar things, or maybe you're a little bit more receptive and understand those types of struggles and are there to support you. Yeah.
Another thing that comes to mind is, when I first learned about the One Project, I immediately gravitated towards it because of the photography aspect of it, because that's what I'm passionate about, and also mental health. But I was hesitant in joining because I'd never been officially diagnosed with any specific mental health condition, nor was I a professional photographer or knew very much about photography at that time. So there were a lot of hesitations for me before I even decided to sign up. But I did because I saw your TED Talk, and it just really kind of changed my perspective and made me realize how impactful photography can be in terms of helping us express ourselves. Mm-hmm. And also in terms of how you talked about the One Project, made it very welcoming, so I joined. But for those who may be experiencing similar hesitations because they either don't have a fancy camera, they don't know those technical terms of photography, or may have never been officially diagnosed with mental health, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of our mission, really. And again, why I saw such a big need in, if we're going back to the phototherapy, therapeutic photography, there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of resistance for people to be able to go and see a therapist. For example, if they haven't before, that might be a difficult challenge, or there's financial barriers to be able to afford it. And really, I saw it as trying to provide something that was as accessible as possible. So, there's people in our community. It's open to people who are supporting others, loved ones that have mental health challenges. And really, the context that we're trying to talk about mental health in is that it's quite a spectrum. There's people are going to experience different conditions differently. You're still having experiences and, still dealing with stigma, regardless if you have a diagnosis or not. Mm-hmm. Again, there's a huge barrier, or there's a huge gap between, knowing that you're struggling or dealing with some stuff and getting a diagnosis. That's a process that you have to go through. Mm-hmm. And so with the One Project, we were really trying to help people start to open up, give them something that they can do. Most people have some type of camera, a smartphone. It doesn't really matter the equipment that you have or the skills. It's just another way of expressing yourself. You're talking through your photos, or you're expressing something through those images. So it's really about taking away all those boundaries, those barriers, all the extra steps that you are important. But if you're, at step one and you're trying to get here, we're trying to add more steps in between that make it easier just to gradually open up and deal with whatever you're going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the One Project has its 10th year anniversary coming up this December. So Congratulations, that's amazing.
Thank you.
I know a lot of heart and tears and sweat has been put into this project of yours, this baby. With all the members that have come and gone, or members that have stayed over time, I know that there's sometimes tendency of members joining very active, and they might go quiet for some time, they're back again active. From your experience, what type of transformation have you seen or changes have you seen in some members? I know everyone's very different, but just in terms of the general transformations that we have seen?
That's a good question. I mean, there's been some members who, again, kind of as you said, everyone has their own kind of process and journey, and whatever they're dealing with the rest of their lives. So some people, can or get involved and want to take more of maybe they're a little bit further along in their journey and they want to take more of an advocacy or a supporting role within the community. They're still going through, their struggles day to day and whatever comes up in their life, but they're wanting to give back and be a little bit more active within the community. And then we have, courses that kind of teach our techniques and help people in a larger way. So we've seen some people, who were wanting to take an even bigger step with, talking about this, whether that's like publishing a book of their photos and a series of their photos, coming from doing the course and being in the community and what they've learned. We've seen some members who have done that. We've a big part of what the One Project has grown into as well is starting to facilitate these more opportunities for people to do that if they're comfortable about speaking publicly about it. So again, the community itself is private and it's for members only. You have to log in to access everything. But we now are working with different partners and everything for exhibitions. We just had recently some members who were published in a magazine sharing their stories. So there's a lot of really cool opportunities that we're starting to be able to offer a lot more now. And just seeing people who, again, we're talking about sometimes speaking about some of these stories for the first time, becoming more comfortable, sharing and connecting with people around these topics in the community. And then, maybe for the first time having their photos featured in that way. And some of the feedback and messages that we get from people of just how meaningful that is to them, because it's such a personal, like for me, the whole One Project is like that. It's such a personal thing that it's so meaningful when, I get those messages of how it's helped people. And for the same way, it's so meaningful for people, if they're sharing these very vulnerable stories. A lot of times, sometimes it's the, very painful experiences or deep struggles that they've dealt with for quite some time. When they see that, sharing and talking about those and opening up and not kind of getting stuck in fear or feeling that you're alone, they see that helps people. It's a huge moment for them. That's, I think, kind of at least what I see as being sort of the most impact from it.
One of the things that I love seeing is, like, in terms of transformation, is the confidence that I see slowly building up in some individuals. Yeah. And even for myself, like at first I was like very hesitant in what I share or, photos that I share, but eventually as time goes on and I develop, I get to know other members, I know that the only thing I will get in return is just positive feedback and support. And sometimes when I share something, I don't necessarily expect someone to be like writing me a paragraphs of like advice or support. All I just even acknowledgement that someone hears me and just to let me know that it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so amazing to have that type of community. Now, in terms of community, there's like, there's all different, like all sorts of types of communities that we can find, whether it's in person and online. I know that with the One Project is mostly based virtually with a private platform. And of course, we're on social media. But in the past, you have also done, in-person meetups as well. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like story meets and if there's plans on doing something like this in the future? Because I know a lot of people are going to be asking about this.
Yeah, it is. It's I don't want to say it's difficult, but it's maybe challenging to achieve some of that with our community because it started out very global. Like there's a lot of members, I would say our top three are kind of the UK, Canada, and the US, but it's very diverse. I think it's like 55 countries or something we have members in on our private community. So, but yeah, the goal has always been to, again, talking about like the accessibility and everything online was the way that we could kind of provide that the easiest in the beginning. With, kind of the limited resources that we have, but we do see again, there's all the different levels of where people are at with this, and in-person connection obviously is that much more helpful and impactful. And especially if you're struggling, if you're able to get outside in nature, we saw not that we saw this, but it's also like studies show that helps reduce anxiety, helps reduce depression. So what we've done in the past, the sort of main thing that we did was called our story meets. It's basically just, a photo walk. We kind of tied in talking about and teaching a little bit of the therapeutic photography techniques, but it was essentially just getting out, with a group of people, again, who kind of understand, are in a similar mindset, or maybe are going through similar things. And you didn't necessarily have to. Again, we kind of kept it quite open and for you to explore it on your own terms, I guess. Like, you didn't have to go and talk about mental health or what you're going through, but sometimes people would have those types of conversations. But it was really great, and it is something we want to keep doing. The big picture is hopefully we can, help empower leaders in different areas of the world of where our community is to host those for the community. Because we do see, like, obviously there's only so much you can do online, and when you're in person, when you're out off of all these screens, there's a lot of other benefits that come from that.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea of having these, story meets where like-minded individuals who have the passion for photography or appreciation of photography can get together, but not necessarily feel pressure to be talking about themselves, which could be a nice way to kind of like ease themselves into just discussing about their mental health experiences and journey. Now, aside from like the physical interactions and meetups that the One Project has hosted in the past, with the community being so strong virtually right now, especially with what's going around, in the world with COVID, even if we wanted to do these meetups, we can't possibly be gathering anyways right now. Have you noticed like a surge in like memberships, like people joining, or even like an increase in activity? And if so, what kind of, do you notice like any types of changes in conversations that people are having online?
Yeah, I mean, it's yes. First of all, so we have seen an increase, and definitely some stories speaking specifically to the like being stuck in isolation versus kind of choosing isolation. A lot of people who are struggling might choose to stay inside, but when you're kind of forced to, or you're not able to have the the little social interaction or getting outside in the same way that you would normally, there's a huge mental health impact of kind of what's going on right now in many different ways for people. So we are seeing stories like that, and that's kind of one of my hopes right now of what I'm trying to kind of foster and facilitate is gathering those types of stories, speaking specifically to what's going on right now, because it's such a unique time. It's a huge I'm not sure if burden's the right word, but I'll say challenge maybe for people's mental health, regardless of if you were struggling in the past or not. There's a lot of people who may have been laid off or are out of work right now, or are just, again, had their, like, for my situation, I really had my my tools and my routines and everything like set. They were solid and everything, but almost all of those things I can't do in the same way now. So it was a full reset of, how am I going to ensure that I'm kind of taking care of my physical health, my mental health, and everything when, I don't have access to the same things that I did before. And, that on top of all the other pieces that are going on, we're definitely seeing a lot of activity around that. And we're just trying to do our best to kind of, again, provide that space for people and help give them a space where they can talk about it if they feel like they can't talk about it anywhere else.
I can imagine how challenging that is, because, I do a lot of personal work as well in terms of like tending to my self-care and just doing whatever it is I need to take care of my mental health. And I actually don't really like to say mental health. I like to just actually focus more on mental wellness, because I think it's just our overall wellness, and mental health is just part of it. And I can imagine how challenging it can be when you work so hard to establish these foundations. And then suddenly, like, it's almost like it's overnight that that foundation is broken and we have to like learn how to rebuild it again, find the motivation and whatnot. And of course, like personally for me, seeing all that was happening on in the news didn't help me much either. Social media consumption like did not help me either. And so I personally had to like scale back. There's so many like recommendations and tips from like government agents, officials, and like medical experts and health professionals about what we can do to take care of our mental health right now. But it's, there's things like stay at home, stay safe, but you can also, and you should also go for walks to kind of balance things out. But there's so many different tips up there about what we can do. How do you feel about the general, I guess it's like services and suggestions that are currently being offered and provided by these officials?
A little hard for me to speak on that. I'm not sure exactly what they all are, so I can't speak to them specifically, but I think just going back to kind of what you were saying a little bit ago, it's, I think it's important to obviously practice caution and take the precautions of staying at home as much as you can. That doesn't mean that you can't go out at all though. And again, those kind of recommendations vary for where people are in the world, depending on what the situation is in that, country or state and everything. But, following those guidelines, but also ensuring that you're not doing so in a way that's super detrimental to you. So if you're able to, get out for a walk in the sunshine and, maintain social distancing and be washing your hands and all those things, wearing a mask, whatever those recommendations are. If you can still fit that in, then I'd recommend that you do that as long as it's being kind of responsible and safe for yourself and others. It looks like as well, if you would go to a gym a couple times a week or maybe once a week or something, how can you do a home workout? Can you, a little bit ago was running up and down the stairs in my apartment building to try and get some activity before I was going to yoga, which I was really into. But there's, free videos, tons on YouTube that you can look at, right? So it's just how can you take what you were doing before, or if you maybe didn't have these routines, how can you stay responsible, but also make sure that your health is taken care of. What are those things that help you the most? Whether it's meditation, yoga, journaling, taking photos, maybe it's, singing in the shower or having a bubble bath once a week or something like that. Like whatever those things are that help you reduce stress, because it's a very stressful time right now. How can you connect with your friends if you're not able to meet up and hang out? Can you have maybe play games online and have a FaceTime call at the same time? Or, just talking with a friend of mine, he was saying that his family, had all their devices set up and they were having dinner together kind of virtually. There's lots of really unique and kind of inventive ways that people are finding out ways to stay connected and stay healthy and everything, which I think is really cool. Like, for example, the place that I was going to yoga is now doing, it's every day almost, they have the classes that they're doing through Instagram for free or by donation. So it's just, it is a good amount of work to figure that out, but it's really important, right? Because those are the things that make a big difference for your health and wellness.
Mm-hmm. And that's a perfect segue into the next question that I actually have for you, which is, everyone is different. So what mental wellness looks like for one person varies from another person. So for you personally, what does mental wellness look like? How does that look like for you?
In terms of what I do for sort of my routines and everything?
Yeah, in terms of your routine, or even just what sort of things do you need to have set in place for yourself that's considered mental wellness? Whether it's connecting with your family members, like maybe that is mental wellness. But for some others, it's like, nope, connecting with my family does not help with their mental wellness.
Yeah.
We're just curious to know, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a few of them before, which were kind of the main ones. And some of them I can't replace. So one of the huge ones that I was doing before, which is part of my main business too, is floating or sensor deprivation. So I was doing that for the last year and a bit. I was doing that every single week. And I don't think I missed a week until the shutdown happened.
Right.
So there's things like that that I can't replace. So then I have to have maybe more of the other things, which, I meditate every day. I try and do yoga a couple times a week, journaling every day. I'm really trying to, like, weather permitting, get outside every day and just go for a walk and move my body. So it's a lot of things like that, now more than ever. Like I was working from home before, now I'm working from home. And like I was talking about before, kind of, I'm forced to stay at home outside of work and everything. So just getting outside, getting connected and having calls with friends or family are all really important, because you can only kind of be cooped up in your own little space. I live by myself too. So, only for so long before, you start to get stressed out or anxious or lonely or whatever. So having those kind of planned and in my schedule as much as possible so that I'm constantly doing them is kind of how I do things.
One of the things I also noticed that you're doing much more of is actually working on your music, which is something that you love doing, but didn't, at one point you just didn't really have the time to focus on your music because of everything else that you were working on. So, how has that creative experience been for you so far, in terms of being locked down at home in your apartment, but finding ways to fill your days with inspiration and creating music? Yeah.
Can I remind me to come back to this, but I want to first talk about the logo.
Okay.
The alternate logo.
For sure.
So this is one of our new hats for the One project. So it has like our kind of main logo here, and then this is like our alternative logo. And this ties in. This is why I'm bringing it up. But so essentially, this is it's a little hard to see on the hat, but it's easier in person. There's like an ENSO logo, which is kind of just like a singular circular brush stroke. And then there's kind of like this yellow light streak behind it. And with the One project, that's I was talking about, helping people get to this space where they can be more comfortable with their creative expression, or just are able to have less barriers, have less hesitation and resistance to talk, whether it's, communicating through your art, through your photos, through your through talking. And so that's really like a core, obviously, part of what the One project is all about, is, and same with the ENSO, is essentially meant as a singular stroke. It's like a Japanese sort of Zen concept or term. And the idea is that it's sort of doing that without any mind interference, let's say. I don't remember the exact terms. So that you can just do that without any second guessing or hesitations and everything. And it's like pure creative flow. So the way that this ties in with the music is, for the longest time, that was photography for me. It still is in some ways, but I would feel this kind of like need to go take photos as a way to express myself. And it was, I think about 2 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I kind of felt that less with photography. And it was a strange period of my life. But it's because I think I'd become so comfortable with it. And I'd done it for so long through that medium that it kind of shifted. And with my art and just my life in general, I'm always trying to learn new things. I'm always trying to, gain new skills and tools and everything. And so that eventually shifted into music. So that's now where I feel, there's a lot I have to learn, and there's a lot of hesitations and challenges and second guessing and everything. So now I'm like, it's almost this new process of that same ENSO concept of, creating despite having these hesitations, or working through that and getting to a point where, through my music, I'm able to kind of have a more pure expression without those barriers. So yeah, like just in the last, I would say, couple weeks, I'm getting to a better state. It's always up and down, especially in the earlier stages where you're still learning and have a lot more kind of like challenges to work through. But yeah, and that's kind of one of the positive sides of this whole like shutdown and staying in is the opportunity for that. But it's the balance of not putting too much pressure on myself to constantly be doing and achieving things, while still, expressing myself creatively and dealing with everything else that's going on right now.
So out of curiosity, I know a lot of creatives, sometimes come across like a creative block, and may not be motivated to do like work on what they're passionate about, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with, all that's going on right now, the anxiety and depression is like heightened, like it's amplified. So when you're not, if someone's not in the mood or have the motivation where they feel inspired to create, but they know that once they do create that they do feel better.
Yeah.
But it's that little, do you know what I mean? Like it's not that hurdle of trying to like get across. I'm like, I know it's good for me, but I just can't get there right now because I'm not in that space.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do personally for yourself? Or, do you have any recommendations or tips for those who struggle with that?
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation because there have been times where I have, it's kind of the like idea, do you need the motivation to be able to do it? Or there's kind of like the two theories on that of like motivation and inspiration comes from you actually doing it. And then mm-hmm. like, as you're doing it, it fuels the kind of more inspiration or motivation. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just getting more, that's again, part of my own life and how I see things and how the one project is kind of set up is helping you get more in tune with yourself. So sometimes, maybe you're burnt out and you actually, it's not good for you to just like keep going. You need to rest right now. Mm-hmm. If you're burnt out, that might come through as, very fatigued, obviously, but like you'll feel creatively blocked because you are so fatigued. So your mind and, everything is not working as good. And if you're able to be more in tune to catch that and know what you need is rest, then, that's the right thing. But if it can be tricky sometimes to know, sometimes you might kind of have your mind telling yourself you're super tired, but maybe you are just kind of like making excuses and, you just need to do it to get back into that routine. So there have been a lot of times where I'm struggling and I'll just do it and not worry so much about, again, it's sort of the Enso concept of making something without the worry of if it's good or not, or if you're, all the questions or all the what ifs and everything are gone, you're just doing it. And because if you're worried about, and actually I'll pull this into another sort of idea with my music and with my photos. I've done 2 now, sort of 1 a day projects or 365 projects. So originally I did it with my photography back in 2013. And then last year I did it with music. And that really taught me how just doing every single day, doing it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of days where I do something and I'm not happy with what I created. But if you keep up and you keep doing it, you'll see that, those days were the days where you were learning or you were experimenting. And then that was what led you to the good stuff. Or like, once the lessons are learned, then you have created something that you're happy with later on. So I hope that sort of answers your question.
Definitely. And I think that, like that practice of doing music every day, like I never that dedicated to be working on something every single day, but like it just reminded me of this project I did a couple of years ago. I think it was called like the Happiness Project, where like every day you take one photo of something that like I took a photo of something that made me happy. Mm-hmm. Did that for like 1 photo a day for a year. And that's different than what you did because there's a lot more creative process and effort that goes into, creating music for you. But just that practice and habit of like finding something to be grateful for, to be happy, helped my mental health so much. Mm-hmm. And helped me just practice gratitude and just finding beauty in the simple things. Because I think that's, a lot of times with social media, especially with social media, you just kind of get sucked into like this amazing life that all these other people are having. And you're like, and then and I compare to like what my life is. And it's so, it's destructive, right?
Yeah.
And it affects everything else. And so by doing that, photo a day project and just practicing gratitude was a huge shift for me. And I think it goes back to a lot with, because it's for everyone, but I think personally for me, working through, my mental health journey, it's about developing healthy habits. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that the one project, tries to teach through like the therapeutic techniques in terms of, it's not about how to take the most epic photo, but it's like how do you develop these little daily habits or regular habits that will help you refine your like self-awareness and self-reflection.
Yeah. Introspection. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now for those, a common thing that I find when I talk to friends or even like other members in the one project is that it's great to have a support network of people who understand what you're going through because they're going through it themselves. But there's also a lot of stigma, all around us. So, and with those stigmas, it makes it challenging for some people to express what they're going through. So what are your thoughts in terms of some of like, the common stigmas that, that our members generally are challenged with, and perhaps some of like the stigmas that you are personally challenged with as well?
Yeah, I mean, they're all over. It's, there's, just to speak to a few, there's, the stigma of, again, seeing a therapist, of maybe there's a stigma around having a diagnosis or taking medication.
Mm-hmm.
Just there's lots of stigma around even certain sort of what your stereotype, what like your what will come into your mind first. It's like the archetype of what a condition is. There's the one thing we're trying to do as well. There's like if you think of someone who's depressed, there's sort of like the stock photo of like a sad woman looking out a rainy windowsill or whatever. That's in some way representative of it, but in some ways that's a very obviously like tiny sliver of what that is, and it's not a full representation. And so that's where we try and really encourage people to share, what are all the thousands of other ways that comes through. There's a lot of people who talk about, I talked about it in my TEDx talk, and there's a few other like key talks around mental health that echo the same thing of kind of this mask. We've had actually a lot of members share stories with the exact same theme of, people who are high functioning, who are doing quite a lot in their lives and no one would really suspect because it's just something that they're dealing with and they don't know how. There's so much stigma, or maybe they're not sure what they're struggling with, that no one really knows. And it's just this thing and that's where you start to feel alone, or that it's that you don't have an outlet or help and support, because if you're not talking about it, it's harder to know what it is. It's harder to know, what those services or supports are, or if and how people are going to be supportive for you. Right. That's that huge barrier for people in the beginning that we try to, again, facilitate like an easier process through. But, the thing is that, the context of our community and everything is that we're all learning together. Part of it is also just sharing stories and connecting to understand, what are those better ways of supporting each other, even for us in the community, but like for people in their day-to-day lives with friends or family, how have you been supported in the past in the best way to help you? We want to hear those stories so that other people can do that for others, right? For their loved ones, or what are the ways that really didn't, help, and how can we do less of that? So it's having all these types of conversations and kind of collecting the insights from those so that everyone can kind of benefit and learn together.
Mm-hmm. Look, one of the things that I admire about you so much is that, you talk about mental health because it's something that you've, gone through personally yourself and like have to do a lot of work to get to where you are. And it's still work that you're doing on yourself. And I personally don't feel like the work on ourselves is never done.
Mm-hmm.
We're always going to grow. We're always going to be learning. There's always going to be new challenges that come through. And so it takes a lot of, so the way I see it, it's not about like just overcoming it and just conquering it, because there's always going to be some sort of challenges and growth that we need. And just wondering in terms of like, seeing others who have been struggling with the mental health, like what are some ways that you've seen them kind of have a breakthrough? Like they may still be working through the mental health journey, but there's like a breakthrough. Like, what do you think in terms of what they may have done, or what are some of the things that they may have done to get them to that point where they were get to the point where they were able to have that breakthrough? Is it like the confidence in, sharing what they're going through? Is it releasing the pressure that they have to satisfy others or live up to other people's expectations? I know it's such a big question, and there's so many different ways in like, going about it, or which from different angles, but just in terms of if there's any particular things you think that people are like techniques or approaches that people are gravitating towards that helps them get to that breakthrough.
I think it's a lot of firsts for people. So, first time sharing anything at all, or sharing, in a private community to people that they don't know in real life. And having, it could be just the fact of sharing that, or the first, thoughtful comment that they get on there. That's kind of validating that was the right thing to do, and that they have someone who's listening and supporting them. It could be the first time that they share it with, some close loved one, or maybe a therapist. So it's a lot of those, again, because if you haven't had those experiences, that's where, if you're a lot of times, like, if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, they can kind of intermingle, and even other conditions, it's very common to have anxiety around talking about it or sharing it, again, because of stigma and all these different things. So whatever it is that you're going through, there's the anxiety of not knowing what is going to happen if you're sharing it, or if you're going to have that conversation with your family or with your partner, or, if the therapist is going to be the right fit for you, or whatever it is. Right. So it's a lot of those firsts that we see people having those sort of breakthrough moments, or, feeling validated that, they're not alone, that it's something that can be sort of managed and worked on, and for some things overcome, could be overcome temporarily. You may deal with it or something else later on. Like it's, but there's people who have gone through similar things, and have, are still functioning and having jobs and, relationships and all those things, right? It's not, it's very often quite different than the fearful stereotypes that, fuel the anxiety.
Just want to shift the conversation a little bit back to, the community of what we're trying to establish, is that we want it to be a place where people are able to come and share how they feel freely without a fear of judgment. But ultimately, I would think that, our main goal is that they're able to go outside of our community eventually, and be able to share how they're feeling, like openly, to anyone that's in it. For those who are not experiencing any mental health challenges, but have loved ones, or perhaps even colleagues are going through that and may not necessarily know what to do. And sometimes, although they have good intentions and want to help, they may not necessarily be providing the support that's needed. So what would you say is the number one or best support that anyone can give to someone else who's struggling?
Big question. So we kind of polled our community on this, not in a huge way, but and it was one of those member opportunities that was collecting stories from the community about kind of like what has helped the most. And if I recall correctly, number one was just listening. Like it's sometimes better to say almost nothing at all. Or, just I'm here. That sounds very difficult, validating. You don't have to have the answers. It's not really about necessarily giving advice. Just letting someone know that you're here, you're open to listening if they want to talk about it. If they, a lot of times people talk about how they might just want to sit and be with someone in silence or, do something together. But number one by far was just having someone listen and be there to hear what's going on. And we've talked about many times how difficult it is not to kind of restrain yourself from getting into, because you care so much, you want to help. And maybe you do have some tools that have worked for you or that you have looked up and know of and everything. But first and foremost is always just being there to hear what's going on, without judgment, without, leaping to trying to fix it. Because a lot of times it's not a simple fix, and it's not just, that you can do a couple things, and it'll go away. It's a lot of times, a full routine or building habits, which are much different than just, it's not about going and working out once and it's going to solve the problem. You got to, build a workout routine and have that mixed up with many different other things in your, we call it kind of your toolkit or your toolbox, for your mental health. So, really just listening.
I think that is so important. Like, listening is so important, but not just, everyone has different needs. So the listening itself is even different, right? Listening is like paying attention to what other person's needs are at that time. And it kind of brings me back to think about, the current situation that we're in right now with COVID. That
actually, can I, there's one other, also just asking them, like, how can I support you right now is, very different than jumping to your own assumptions of what they might need or what might be best for them. Listen and ask them, and they might not know, which is, common if they're in distress maybe, or things like that. But, that's again, something that we kind of jump sometimes to trying to fix it. Whereas, we might skip that simple step of just asking, how can I be here for you? How can I help you? How can I support?
I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because that's something, I remember reaching out to you before as well, asking you, how do I support somebody who's struggling? Because I want to help and I'm trying to listen, but that person, it's hard to listen when the person doesn't even want to talk. So there's nothing for me to listen to. And I think one of the best advice I got from you was to straight up ask, right? And, one response I got before was, I don't know what I need from you, because I don't know even what it is that I need. And that kind of left me in a place where I'm like, well, then now what? But I realized, from talking to you, that in itself is enough. That person even just acknowledging, saying that they don't know what support that they need, but just the simple fact that you ask them, even to give them that space and to give them that chance to say what they need is so important.
And that's an important insight too, of it's like you say the first step is kind of, acknowledging that the fact that you don't know what you need is important, because it's, in order to take care of yourself, you need to know, what are my needs? How do I fulfill those things? How do I maintain my wellness? And if you're not sure, that's a really important insight, and should be, this comes to sort of the tagline of the One Project is, you're the most important project of your life. So, you're in my eyes, and how I've looked at it for my life, is like, that should be priority number one. Like, obviously involved in that is like pay my bills and having work and money and all those things, but I need to figure that out because, if I'm not sure what those things are, again, we're going back to talking about the current situation. It's like, I'm revisiting that question of how I don't know how to do that in the current situation. So I need to come back to that question and reevaluate. But it's that type of, through the introspection of, and it's different for everyone. For us, we focus on photography because it's very accessible. It's something that people have access to, but for other people, it could be through music, through journaling, through just doing kind of working through it on paper. But it's really important to answer those questions for yourself.
Definitely agree on that. I think it's so amazing, like with what's happening right now, there's definitely a lot of, darkness and pain, and there are a lot of people struggling. But at the same time, there's been so much beauty that I've seen in terms of just people coming together, helping one another, uplifting one another, utilizing whatever skills they have to help others in the way that they may need. So once again, it's going back to, not necessarily trying to fix someone's problems, but just trying to support them in the way that they need at that time. So, whether it's, frontline workers needing masks, it's like, all right, well, that's what they need. What can I do to, support that or supply that or distribute it? Or, seniors who aren't able to go to the grocery stores because, it's not safe for them. It's like, all right, what can I do as an individual that can, support them? Sometimes it's just simply calling a friend up and, calling up a friend who, is working from home and who's with their kids all day long and just need a 15-minute mental break to talk to another human being that's not their family or not who they're stuck with at home, just to give them that little breather, right? So even that like simple gesture makes such a huge difference. And I love seeing all these businesses out there right now pivoting and trying to find ways to support others with the resources they have. Just wondering, like, is there something like with all the kindness that so many people have been demonstrating right now, is there one that comes to mind that, that
sticks out for me?
Inspired by?
Good question. Lots. Let me see if I can pull one. I think this is more like big picture, just the sort of reframing of really wanting to support local. Our world has become so globalized and interconnected. That's part of what, is part of the cause of what's been going on and why it's such a global shutdown basically. Right. But there's a lot of, stores, shops, a lot of people's livelihoods that are invested into these businesses locally that are really struggling and kind of are handcuffed in a lot of ways by the preventative measures of what's going on. So I think, people coming together and coming up with different solutions of how to support those, whether it's even like, nonprofits and charities of food banks, struggling and people really coming together to help support that, or whether it's, a local restaurant that you really like, just all the different ways that, there's not really specific stories. It's just those bigger, all those different stories coming together for these bigger solutions, I think is really cool. And I think there's a lot of, I was just talking with a friend about this on a call today. A lot of silver linings and a lot of positive that can come from this, whether it's, way more people working from home because that suits them better. And it's now kind of a proven concept that it works and it can be done, meaning there's, a lot less commuting, pollution from people having to go into an office every day. There's different things like that, it's really, it's a difficult time that a lot of people are going through. Everyone's going through something sort of different, but there's a lot of, I think, good that can come from this. Even again, all those different ways that people are coming together to support each other and protect each other too.
Do you find that with what's been happening, has that shifted how you're operating the one project now, or has that perhaps even sparked some new ideas in terms of what you want to do and offer to the community?
I wouldn't say it's shifted, because we've always kind of had, we talked about before, there's a lot of these businesses that are really shifting and going online and digital. And that was kind of how we did things from the beginning. So in a way, it's kind of been a benefit for us that, especially now that we have like our system is set up, we have a mobile app those were our barriers before that made it hard to, people are so used to Facebook and these huge companies that have, all the resources and developers to make apps. We now have a nice home and community space that solves those issues. So I would say I think it's post what's going on right now. I think, might put a little bit more fire under us to bring people together like offline more and facilitate that. Cause I know for myself, and I think for a lot of people, that we're all going to, I think, be more mindful and be more grateful for all those little, it could be going to a cafe with a friend across the street or something. And that in my eyes, I think we're going to be much more present for that, hopefully, and grateful for those times, because we couldn't do that for however long this goes on for. Right. And so I think, speaking back to what we were talking about the photo meets, or again, like I said, we have all these different opportunities like exhibitions or art shows and things like that. I think if we're able to, with our resources, do more of those types of things and facilitate those in-person connections and conversations, I think that because that's really where, again, we talk about those kind of breakthrough moments for people, those important first moments. If it's in person, it's the same thing. It's just that much more impactful. If we were to have a member, I'm in Montreal, if we were to have an exhibition with member stories and someone from Montreal was able to go to the exhibition and talk with people about their story and see it, that's just so much more meaningful for them than if it's, in somewhere where they're not able to go and see it. I think that just those in-person connections will mean that much more.
Well, one of the interesting things that I know you're doing is actually having a virtual talk.
Oh yeah. I forget sometimes all the things.
I do a lot. And but I recognize all the amazing things that you're doing. So I definitely want, opportunity to just chat a little bit about, this talk, because it's something that you haven't done before, from what I believe. I know you've done some videos before where it's just you talking, but I think this is the first time we're actually holding a virtual, I guess you can say virtual conference. Virtual conference where you're talking about
the talk. You're
doing a talk and people are able to engage with one another and ask questions. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what that is and kind of what inspired you to do that? Sure.
Yeah. We're calling it Process Talks. So, it's been an idea that's been cooking in the back of my mind for quite some time. And, I guess, with what's going on, and, we were just wanting to provide, how can we take the digital connection sort of closer to the in-person as much as we can with what's happening. And again, kind of providing access to our community that's all around. So the concept is basically just diving deeper into people's photos or their series and talking about the process, whether it's, we have some members that are a lot more skilled with Photoshop and that type of thing and do these beautiful fantasy photos and everything. So we can get them talking and showing maybe their process of how they do that so that others can learn how to do similar photos or similar techniques, or even just, peek behind the curtain of how they're able to do these really beautiful visuals, while at the same time talking about, what does that mean for them? Why is it that they're creating the photo to be this, and what does that maybe like symbolize for them. So it's, these are sort of the conversations that happen in the comments of stories when people share on the platform, but obviously it's more in depth, and it's a different ball game a little bit when it's live and we're able to talk back and forth just like this. And then even open it up to questions from the community through that format. So yeah, I'm excited. We're going to start that this week, I guess. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting and cool to just learn more about, the members of the community and provide a platform in a different way.
So how would, if someone's interested, if one of our, audience members, are interested, if they're interested in taking part in this talk that you're doing, how can they sign up for it? And what other ways can they get involved with the One Project or support them?
Yeah, they can go to theoneproject.co, CO. There they can, and we kind of have like two parts to our community. One is the private, the app, the private community, which they can sign up for. Community access is forever free. Again, we're trying to reduce as many barriers as possible and make it easier for people to get that support. And then there's kind of the public side, which is more of our like advocacy, all the events. Our website has over 300 now stories that people have given permission to share publicly. So you can go through and read some stories and kind of see what it's like. But yeah, everything can be found at theoneproject.co.
Awesome. And before we sign off, did you want to share any social handles that you have where people can follow you and what you're up to?
Yeah. Mine is Art of Bryce, I think everywhere, and artofbryce.com. You can find my personal website, and the One Project is the One Project on Instagram is kind of our main place to go. And also just wanted to say thank you for all the work that you've done with the One Project and being community manager and everything. It's been, it's helped us get to this point and helped make a lot of this happen.
You're welcome. It's been honestly truly an honor to be part of the One Project. It was something that I was so passionate about from the very beginning when it was, I found out it was community photography and mental health. And it's something that I'm still very passionate about. So I'm so happy to be able to use this platform to showcase what you're doing and also the One Project. So to everyone else, I hope that you found this helpful and that you're inspired to, amplify your impact as well and use your voice. As Bryce mentioned, if you want to follow along what his work is and what he's doing for the One Project, check him out on social media. All right.
Thanks, Kathy.
Guys.